This is Group 14 with our video about soap molecules. Soaps are a compound that are found in nearly every single American household. This group of compounds is essential to modern life because it prevents us from accumulating dirt and oils on our bodies and plays a role in preventing the spread of germs. So to start off, the first evidence of anything resembling soap was in ancient Babylon in 2800 BCE. They used a mixture of wood ash and either plant or animal fats to create a soapy solution that made removing oily residues much easier. These were not used for hygiene purposes, but rather in the kitchen and for medicinal uses. Skin diseases were usually treated using this soap. In 1500 BCE, an Egyptian medical record also details a recipe for making a soap-like material from oil and alkaline salts, but the Egyptians would also use it for personal hygiene and bathing, rather than just medical purposes. Several other ancient civilizations also used similar methods, and we actually got the name from soap from a Roman legend about Mount Sappho. It described the rainwater flowing down the mountain, causing ash and animal fats to mix and creating a sort of clay that somehow made washing easier. Unfortunately, after the fall of the Roman Empire, the use of soap for personal hygiene fell out of practice. Bathing practices played an important role in the spread of diseases, and using soap for personal hygiene regularly would have potentially lessened the impact of the Black Death.
Soap is made from two key ingredients, an acid and a base. The acid is usually in the form of animal fat or vegetable oil, while the base, or more commonly known as lye, is sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide. Soap is made by reacting the acid and base through a process called saponification, which is the hydrolysis of esters. Saponification is also an exothermic reaction and takes about 24 to 48 hours to complete. During saponification, there is a nucleophilic attack by the hydroxide, followed by the removal of the leaving group. Finally, deprotonation occurs. There is a one-step and two-step saponification process. The two-step is slower but produces a higher quality soap. Overall, fat and lye are combined to produce soap and glycerol. There are four main handmade soap production methods: melt and pour, cold process, hot process, and rebatching. We will take a closer look at the cold process method because it is the most popular. First, all ingredients are gathered and weighed. Then, lye is added to water, a reaction that produces a lot of heat. While the mixture cools down, the oils or fats are prepared by melting them to an appropriate temperature, usually around 120 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. The fats are then combined with the lye and blended until a trace, which is when a small bit of the soap mixture can be drizzled on top and leave a little trace or pattern before sinking back into the mixture. Essential oils can then be added for fragrance. The soap is then poured into a mold. Then it is covered and insulated to finish the saponifying process. After it is cooled, it is taken out of the mold and sliced into bars. The bars then undergo cure time, where they sit out and air dry for 4 to 6 weeks before being used. Melt and pour is great for beginners because it is the easiest. The hot process method is very similar to cold process, but excess heat is applied to make the reaction go faster. A crockpot or microwave is usually used with this method. Rebatching is mainly used to save a batch that didn't quite turn out right by remelting the already made soap and making adjustments to it using hot or cold process techniques.
Soap molecules are both hydrophilic and hydrophobic. The polar head interacts with water through hydrogen bonds, and the fatty tail repulses water but forms dispersion force interactions with oil, dirt, grease, and pathogens with lipid membranes. Because of this, soap molecules act as a bridge between water and oil. When you scrub your hands with soap and water, the nonpolar tails of soap molecules are attracted and bind to grease particles. Then, they surround and trap the grease particles in the center while position themselves into a spherical structure called micelle. Micelles are spherical aggregates where hydrophilic polar heads interact with water while nonpolar tails are shielded on the inside. Because the polar heads have a negative charge, micelles are repulsed from one another. This prevents grease particles from merging and maintains the stability of the structure. Finally, when you rinse your hands, water pulls micelles-formed soap molecules that are bound to grease particles from your hands and down the drain.
Soaps used to be considered a household chore. It wasn't until the late 16th century that soap began to be commercialized. In 1791, French physician and chemist Nicolas Leblanc patented the Leblanc process, where table salt could be converted into sodium carbonate using sulfuric acid, carbon, and calcium carbonate. Sodium carbonate is one of the main components used in soap making because when in water it dissolves into carbonic acid and sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is the base component of soap molecules. This linear synthesis paved the way for large-scale manufacturing of soap using sodium carbonate. Later, in the late 19th century, Ernest Salvoy patented the Salvoy process. Similar to the Leblanc process, sodium chloride and calcium carbonate are used to synthesize sodium carbonate. However, this reaction uses an ammonia catalyst and generates less waste than the Leblanc process. It's much more profitable because fewer reagents need to be replenished throughout the production of sodium carbonate, and manufacturers can designate a smaller budget towards waste management. The Salvoy process is the reaction that we use today in modern chemical plants. In the context of the current pandemic, we are all doing our best to prevent the spread of COVID-19. One of the most important things we can do is to wash our hands more frequently, especially after going out and touching surfaces. The soap people think of first is generally antibacterial hand soap. We are told if that we use this kind of soap, it would be more effective at preventing the spread of germs. In the past, the added ingredients that made hand soaps antibacterial were most commonly triclosan and triclocarban. Triclosan is used in liquid soaps, while triclocarban are used in bar soaps. Researchers found data suggesting that these chemicals were potentially toxic to human health in 2013, and the FDA subsequently issued a ban in 2016 on these ingredients in soap products.
Despite the ban, many companies have been experimenting with alternative antibacterial chemicals: benzalkonium chloride, benzothonium chloride, and chloroxylenol. They all work by penetrating into the bacteria cell and pulling apart its plasma membrane, causing cell leakage and lysis as well as disrupting important cell processes. Chloroxylenol works to clean infected wounds and surgical instruments. Benzothonium chloride and benzalkonium chloride are closely related to each other. They're both non-alcohol-based active ingredients in soap and can be found in common household items such as Wet One wipes and Dial antibacterial soap. However, the FDA noted that further research is needed to determine its effects on humans and the environment.
Washing your hands with soap and warm water for at least 20 seconds is the most effective way to combat germs. Soap has come a long way since it was first invented, and it continues to grow with different recipes and formulas being created every day. With a wide variety of soap available, it's easier to keep ourselves and society clean and healthy. Thank you for watching.